Welcome to Beyond the Nebula, where humanity doesn't just survive, we rewrite the stars. These original HFY stories explore what happens when humans show the galaxy what we're truly made of. The transmission cut through every frequency like a blade. You sent your fleets, you demanded surrender, you chose war, and now you'll taste it. Admiral Susan Blake stood before the holographic array on Earth's orbital command station, the Sol Bastion, her breath slow and controlled. Behind her, the deep black of space pulsed with light, distant flashes from the outer defensive ring where Earth's battered remnants still held the line. The message, repeated again, translated across thousands of dialects, echoing into enemy space. She wanted them to hear it. She wanted it burned into their memory. The Vanakar had arrived 2 standard months ago, descending on the Sol system like a tidal wave of chrome and fire. One of their destroyers alone had split Titan Station in half. Jupiter's orbital colonies were now debris rings. Humanity's attempts at diplomacy were dismissed with one reply: "You are inefficient. Your extinction will be clean." They thought they could break Earth in a week. They were wrong. Susan turned from the display as her second-in-command approached. Commander Mike Dalton, bleeding from a gash near his temple, looked like he hadn't slept in days. He hadn't. No one had. "They're massing again near Mars' debris field," Mike said. 12 dreadnoughts, hundreds of carrier-class drones. Looks like a push. "Let them," Susan replied, voice like steel being drawn. "We need them all in one place." He arched an eyebrow. "You're sure this plan's worth the cost?" "No," she said flatly, "but it's the only one we've got." She returned to the command platform and keyed in the tactical overview. Red markers swarmed across the display like a virus, enclosing Earth on 3 sides. Humanity had lost 72% of its orbital fleet in the first week. Civilian casualties were uncountable. Entire cities were glassed. But there was something the Vanakar still didn't understand. Something the archivists never taught them. Humanity doesn't die quietly. They thrive in pressure, in chaos, in ruin. And they had a secret. Susan tapped a command. A panel slid open from beneath the floor, revealing a cylindrical artifact suspended in a triple-lock containment field. It glowed with a dull, flickering pulse, old tech, buried beneath Antarctica and retrieved only when the first Vanakar ship arrived. Humanity hadn't built it, but they had learned it. She turned to Mike again. "Is protocol ignition ready?" Mike hesitated. "You want to unleash that now?" "I want the Vanakar to understand what happens when you push a death world to its edge." He nodded, hesitating only once before locking in the command. The artifact pulsed once, then twice, then began to hum. Across Earth's scattered defenses, hundreds of silent installations flickered to life. Black obelisks embedded deep in the crust, built in secret after the first interstellar contact decades ago, hidden from satellites, from allies, even from the Earth assembly itself. Project Warspike, high-acceleration modular mass energy rails. "Target Mars Vector," Susan commanded. "Fire when ready." Mike nodded. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. The planet shook. A soundless tremor pulsed through space as kinetic rods the size of skyscrapers were hurled at near-relativistic speed from Earth's surface. They passed silently through the dark, undetectable by standard Vanakar sensors until it was too late. One struck a dreadnought mid-formation. It split in half. Not melted. Not exploded. Split. Another punched through 3 carriers before detonating inside a 4th. By the time the 3rd rod hit, the Vanakar fleet was in chaos. Drones scattered. Command ships veered off course, rerouting mid-formation, trying to find the source of the attack. But there was nothing to find. No heat signatures, no ships. Just Earth. Just its silence. Susan stood tall, watching the chaos unfold. Mike let out a breathless laugh. "They're panicking." "They should be," she replied, "because that was just a warning." She leaned forward and reopened the transmission channel. The holographic image flickered back to life, her face projected into the bridge of the Vanakar flagship now orbiting Neptune. "You think we are savages, primitive, unoptimized." Her voice dropped an octave, dripping with venom. "But here's what your archives don't tell you. We were born on a death world. We've killed gods, rewritten physics, and torn apart every chain ever placed on us. You crave war, then taste our defiance." She cut the signal. Far across the system, on the Vanakar command deck, Commander Ceylon flicked one of his forward appendages in confusion. The transmission had no traceable origin, no encryption schema, no signature. It was as if the humans were speaking directly into their minds. "Inferior species," he hissed, lashing out in desperation. But even he couldn't explain how the dreadnought had been destroyed in one shot, or why every single AI subsystem on the carrier fleet was beginning to malfunction. Back on Earth, Susan turned to the gathered command staff. All eyes were on her now. Fear and awe mixed in their faces like two colours in a storm. She let the silence linger, then spoke. "Phase 2 begins in 48 hours. Until then, we hold the line." Down on Earth's surface, in the ruins of what used to be Washington, D.C., the skies glowed crimson from plasma fire. Entire city blocks were dust. Streets cracked open like veins. Yet beneath a collapsed cathedral, dozens of resistance fighters huddled inside a reinforced bunker. Captain Eli Drayton's voice cracked from dehydration, but he didn't stop giving orders. "We patch in once the sky clears. Comms go to channel 37, and if you see blue fire, run. They've got a new drone type with grav crushers." "Sir," one soldier muttered, "is it true the Admiral's alive?" Eli paused, then nodded. "She's alive, and she's got a plan." The others didn't cheer. They were too tired, too bloodied, but the fire lit again behind their eyes. They could still fight, and above them, deep in orbit, Sol Bastion turned its guns once more toward the stars. The sky was bleeding. Bright arcs of plasma sliced through the black clouds as Earth's last shield dome sputtered and failed. What used to be Chicago was now a canvas of ash and twisted steel. Buildings toppled like dominoes, cars burned, the air smelled like ozone and melted bone. Sergeant Bill Carson crouched behind the remains of an overpass, rifle trembling in his grip. The charge meter flashed red, 3 shots left. Maybe 4 if he feathered the trigger. Didn't matter. "Carson, we've got movement. 6 o'clock. Corporal Donna Hughes shouted, already swinging her launcher toward the breach in the rubble line. Bill dropped to one knee and scanned. 6 shadows darted between a gutted department store and the husk of a transit hub. Sleek, spider-like forms, Vanakar infantry drones, needle limbs, fluid armor, silent. "Engage on my mark," he barked. 3, 2. Before he hit one, Donna fired. The rocket screamed across the field, smashing into the lead drone. It crumpled mid-run, they tumbling into a wall of concrete with a wet crunch. The others scattered, moving with liquid grace, almost dancing. Bill squeezed his trigger. The bolt hit the next one's center mass. No explosion, just a quick burst of steam and collapse. Then chaos. Return fire lit the street. A hail of glowing darts shot overhead like angry wasps. Donna ducked back behind the truck chassis they were using for cover. "We're going to get pinned," she shouted. "What's the evac window?" Bill checked his cracked wrist pad. "Gone. They pulled the birds 15 minutes ago." Donna swore. "So that's it?" "No," he said, teeth gritted. "That just means we hold." A new shape rose behind the drones. Taller, bulkier, almost humanoid. Bill froze. "Juggernaut," he yelled. "Heavy frame." The thing roared. Not with sound, but with force. An invisible shockwave swept the battlefield, knocking dust, ash, and debris into the air. A full-body rail cannon extended from its shoulder. "We're not going to scratch that," Donna said. Bill wasn't listening. He was sprinting. Straight at it. "Cover me," Donna fired wildly, pinning the drones down. Bill ducked under 2 ricocheting blasts, vaulted over a collapsed pillar, and slid feet first behind a broken news kiosk about 20 meters from the Juggernaut. The monster turned. Bill didn't think. He pulled the last charge from his belt, a micro-fission grenade. Primitive, by today's standards, but it still packed a wallop. He rolled it under the kiosk, aimed it at the thing's legs, and hit detonate. The boom shook the block. A brilliant white flash drowned everything else. When the smoke cleared, the Juggernaut was on its back, legs sheared off at the knee. Bill exhaled. Then he heard the hiss. A drone had circled. It stood behind him now, silent, needle limbs twitching, one blade rising from its wrist. Bill closed his eyes. A crack rang out. The drone's head exploded. Bill opened his eyes. Lieutenant Tom Keller stood 30 feet away, rifle barrel still smoking. "Jesus, Bill, you trying to get yourself killed?" "Just trying to break even." Tom offered a hand, pulled him up. The 3 of them regrouped behind a scorched sedan as the enemy fell back into the smoke. Donna slumped, her side bleeding from a glancing hit. "I think I caught one." Tom tore open a med pack and started spraying synth foam. "You're lucky, that crap cuts straight through armor." Bill watched the horizon. Why'd they fall back? Tom shook his head. Not sure. Could be regrouping. Could be. A low hum began vibrating the ground beneath them. Tom stopped talking. So did everyone. From the east, above the jagged rooftops of the obliterated skyline, a black wedge-shaped object descended. It didn't glow, didn't hum like the Vanaka ships. It rumbled. It lumined. Donna blinked. Is that one of ours? Bill nodded slowly. Looks like they brought out the old toys. The wedge extended stabilizers locking into place above the ruined downtown core. Its underside opened, and from it a rain of steel dropped to the ground. Exos. Full-power, multi-stage exosuits, the kind that hadn't been used since the Sirius uprising 20 years ago. They hit the dirt like gods, one after another, guns already raised. Leading them was a figure in dark grey armour older than the rest. No insignia, just a blood-red stripe down the arm. The soldiers in the street froze. "Holy hell," Tom breathed. "That's Colonel Ray Maddox." Bill almost laughed. "Thought he retired." Donna stared. "He did." After the New Mumbai collapse. The colonel raised his hand. His voice boomed from the suit's external speakers. "Sergeant Carson, Lieutenant Keller, you're with me." The three scrambled forward, following the exo-line as it advanced like a tank column. Drones began to swarm again, but they were met with unrelenting fire. Plasma bolts from the exos cut through their ranks, burning clean holes through armor and alloy. Bill's heart pounded as he slid behind one of the walking tanks. Maddox turned slightly. "You've been holding this street?" "Yes, sir." "Then now we take it back." He keyed a command. From the hovering wedge, a second wave of exos dropped, this time larger frames with mounted turrets. And then, silence. The Vanakar had gone quiet. Too quiet. Maddox raised a hand. "Everyone stop." They paused mid-step. Then it came. A scream, not a human one. Something deeper. Across the rooftops, black smoke thickened, like it was moving on its own. The cloud curled and folded, taking shape, and from it emerged a creature unlike anything Bill had ever seen. 10 feet tall, semi-translucent skin, dozens of needle tendrils flicking in the wind. It didn't walk. It flowed. "New bioform," Maddox said grimly. "They're sending the high-tier harvesters." Tom stepped back. "That thing looks like it eats tanks. We don't give it the chance." The colonel raised both arms and fired twin-linked grav cannons. The street erupted. The creature shrieked, lunging forward as debris flew in every direction. Bill fired alongside the others, round after round, but the thing barely slowed. Then Donna stepped forward. Her launcher was slung across her back. She held something else now, a long rod with a blinking tip. "Old tech! EMP spike!" she shouted. "No!" Tom yelled. "You'll be exposed. I'll be fast." She sprinted straight toward the creature. The thing turned toward her, recognizing a threat, and extended its tendrils. Bill watched as Donna leapt over a burning taxi, dove under a crumbling sign, and jammed the spike directly into the thing's chest. The blast was blinding. When Bill opened his eyes, the creature was twitching, frozen mid-lunge. Then it collapsed. Donna lay nearby, coughing. Maddox was already at her side. "Hell of a move, Corporal," she grinned through the soot. "I figured, why not make it mad?" Bill laughed. The tension broke just enough to feel human again. And above them, the wedge ship opened another bay, this time deploying communication drones. Maddox looked to the sky. "New orders incoming." Bill adjusted his grip on the rifle. "Think this was just the opening act?" The colonel didn't answer. He didn't need to. The way he looked back toward the sky, toward the enemy fleet still circling Mars, said everything. This wasn't over. It was just getting started. The dropship vibrated like a shaken beer can as it punched through low orbit, hull creaking under the strain of atmospheric re-entry. Captain Eli Drayton braced his boots against the bulkhead and checked his sidearm again. Not that it would do much against Vanakar alloy, but it wasn't about firepower. It was about intent. Next to him sat Sergeant Bill Carson, stripped of his previous squad patch and now wearing the dark grey unit colours of Ghost Team 9. Across from them, Lieutenant Tom Keller finished sealing the last canister of plasma charges. "You know this is suicide, right?" Keller said, glancing at Bill. Bill cracked a grim smile. "Yeah, that's why it'll work." Their mission wasn't complicated, just impossible. The Varnaker's forward command relay was parked inside the remains of Tharsis Ridge, using the crushed Martian terrain as natural defense. From there, they coordinated all drone fleets orbiting Earth, and had begun broadcasting a suppression signal, jamming Earth's orbital cannons and scrambling kinetic strike targeting. Without it, humanity couldn't launch another barrage like Warspike. Their job? Sneak in. Blow it up. Get out. Eli keyed the comms to speak to the whole cabin. Listen up. No one's going to hand us medals for this. We succeed. No one will know our names. We fail. Well, they'll glass our planet anyway. The 6 other soldiers in the cramped dropship nodded. Veterans, every one. Worn faces, scarred hands, the kind of soldiers who didn't need a speech. The pilot's voice crackled through the comm. Touchdown in 2 minutes. Get ready. Bill checked his helmet seal and gave a last look to Keller. You ever regret staying in? He asked. Keller shrugged. I like the view from rock bottom. The cabin lights shifted to red. Touchdown imminent. They braced. The dropship dropped like a stone, flared thrusters for half a second, and slammed into the dust at the base of Tharsis Ridge. Doors hissed open. Ghost Team 9 moved as one. Martian twilight was a mix of red dust and ash. The ridge loomed above them like a jagged scar. Somewhere beyond those rocks, the Vanakar relay pulsed, giant and half-buried, a grotesque fusion of organic scaffolding and machinery. It throbbed like a wound on the planet. Eli gestured forward. Carson, Keller, with me. Hughes, cover rear, fan left. The team split, using broken terrain and shadow to stay low. Night vision flickered on, bathing the world in ghostly green. Movement, whispered Donna Hughes from the rear. 2 o'clock, skimmers, patrolling. Let them pass, Eli said. They froze as 2 Vanakar skimmer drones floated over the ridge, tendrils scanning the dust for signs of heat or motion. The drones hesitated, then moved on. Go! They moved fast now, crossing 40 meters of open ground and slipping into a cave system near the ridge base. Inside, it was cooler. Echoes of dripping condensation created a strange rhythm that barely masked the distant hum of the relay. Bill stopped. A shape loomed in the tunnel ahead. Tall, thin, motionless. Statue? Keller whispered. Bill shook his head. Biosentry. Organic armor, neural interface spine. Standing guard without breath or blink. A Vanakar sentinel. Keller raised his rifle. Eli held up a hand. No, it's asleep. Bill frowned. They sleep? No, they meditate. Direct uplink to the relay core. If we kill it, they'll know. So? Eli reached into his satchel and pulled out a black cube. Let's make it a ghost. The cube buzzed once, then disintegrated in his hand. Nanocloud. The mist swirled silently, wrapped around the sentinel's head, and sank in. The sentinel stiffened. Then relaxed, its eyes dimmed. That'll buy us maybe 20 minutes, Eli muttered. Go. They pushed deeper. At the heart of the ridge, the cave gave way to a chamber of alien glass and flesh. The relay core loomed before them, 50 meters tall, webbed in blue strands and lit with internal lightning. Eli gave a soft whistle. Hell of a design. Bill was already moving. Keller, charges. Donna, timers, I'll plant the spike. They worked in silence. One by one, plasma charges were sunk into the relay's lower nodes. Keller locked them in. Donna synced the timers, one set to detonate in 5 minutes, the other 2 on remote triggers for fallback. Then Bill approached the final node. A small access port pulsed like a heartbeat. He reached into his coat and pulled out something far older than any Vanakar system, a black metal shard etched with earth runes. Recovered tech. Not human-made, but human-tested. He pressed it into the node. The heartbeat stopped. What was that? Keller asked. Bill backed away. Insurance. Eli checked the timers. Time to go. They turned to leave and walked straight into a Vanakar officer. It stood in the exit path, its skin like liquid glass, 4 arms curling around a plasma blade. None of them moved. The officer looked directly at Eli. You were not expected, it said in perfect English. That's kind of our thing, Eli replied and drew his sidearm. The shot went wild. The Vanakar lunged. Chaos. Keller tackled it, firing into its midsection. It hissed, spun, slashed. Keller flew back, bleeding. Donna threw a concussion charge. The blast stunned it just long enough for Bill to rush in and bury a plasma knife in its throat. It gurgled, stumbled, then exploded. The blast knocked them off their feet. The whole relay shook. Eli crawled to Keller. You with me? Keller groaned. I'll live. Then run. They dragged him between them, hauling out into the tunnel. Alarms were now screaming. The relay was waking up, so were the drones. They cleared the chamber just as more sentinels activated, screeching, crawling down walls like spiders. Carson, Eli shouted. Hit it! Bill pulled the remote trigger. Nothing. What the hell? Bill's eyes widened. EMP lag, the spikes jamming our signal. Manual then. Bill turned, sprinted back toward the relay core. "Bill!" Donna screamed. "Cover me!" He dodged the sentinels, slid under a falling girder, and reached the main charge console. Hands bleeding, vision swimming. He pressed the button. The ridge erupted behind him. The explosion vaporized the core and half the chamber. Rocks collapsed, flesh walls melted. Sentinels vanished in fire. Eli and Donna dragged Keller into the dust as Bill stumbled out of the cave, his face half burned, armor cracked. But he was alive. They sprinted downhill, ducking fire from drone squads swarming in from orbit. The dropship's emergency beacon was active, but surrounded. Eli growled, "We're not going to make it." Then a shadow passed overhead. A new dropship, sleek black, older than current models. No insignia, it hovered low. Ramps dropped, gun ports flared. The drones didn't stand a chance. Someone in power armor waved them forward. They didn't ask questions. Once aboard, the door sealed. The ship rocketed up. No IFF, no transponder, just silent ascent. In the back, a voice spoke. "You blew the relay?" Eli nodded. "Yeah." "Good," said the stranger. "Now the real war begins." "Admiral." Susan Blake stood at the center of Sol Bastion's command dome, gripping the rail so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The relay was down. Good. But the retaliation had begun. Bad. Very bad. From the viewport she could see 3 separate Vanakar armadas converging on Earth's orbit. Even without the relay, the bastards still had sheer volume on their side. Dozens of dreadnoughts, hundreds of carriers, and a new class of warform she didn't recognize. Long and segmented, almost serpentine. "Status," she barked. Commander Mike Dalton turned from the TAC display. "Multiple contact points, Pacific defense grids already been shredded. The orbital cannon arrays are misfiring. Whatever they hit us with, it's screwing our targeting." "EMP?" "No, worse. A waveform disruptor. They're seeding low orbit with distortion mines. It's corrupting our predictive targeting systems." Susan swore under her breath. "They want us blind, and they want it fast." She stepped toward the helm and tapped a series of command runes. A grid of Earth lit up. Entire swaths were already in blackout. Africa's east coast was gone dark. The Southeast Asian shield line had collapsed an hour ago. And now the Americas were next. "Where's Maddox?" she asked. His exo battalions were supposed to fall back to atmospheric drop zones. Dalton hesitated. "Still planetside. He's been holding the Chicago front with Ghost Team 9. Tell him to fall back to Anchorage platform. He's no good to us dead." He said, and I quote, "If they want my corpse, they can come earn it." Susan allowed herself a bitter grin. Colonel Ray Maddox had always been a stubborn bastard. A proximity alert screamed. "Contact! Multiple inbound spikes!" someone shouted. 15 projectiles entering from high Mars orbit. Susan's blood went cold. They're dropping rods. Not missiles, not plasma. Rods. The Vanakar had learned from Earth's kinetic weapon strikes, and now they were returning the favor. She snapped to action. "Redirect shield grid to intercept trajectories. Prioritize mainland zones and orbital command. I want surface interceptors in the sky yesterday." A dozen operators scrambled to comply. Lights blinked. Alarms screamed. Every screen showed the same thing, death falling at terminal velocity. Susan closed her eyes and counted backward from 5. When she opened them, the rods were within atmosphere. One landed in the Atlantic, off the coast of Brazil. The water column rose 15 kilometers into the air. The shockwave broke half the satellites in equatorial orbit. Another struck near Lagos. And a third. She watched it live. There was no impact, no crater, just light, and then nothing. The screen cut out. Dalton turned to her. "We've lost 8 million. Instantly." Susan didn't blink. She couldn't afford to. "Status on Warspike reserves?" Dalton checked the registry. "We've got 12 rods left in the pipe. After that, we're spent. No replacements. The forges in Siberia were hit 2 days ago." "Then we make these count." She opened the central command link and activated the targeting council. Across deep bunkers and hidden command platforms, the remaining Earth generals appeared in grainy hollow. Some wore medals, some wore bandages. All looked like ghosts. Susan didn't wait. "They're retaliating for Mars, and they're doing it fast. If we don't answer hard, and now, they'll crack the planet open like an egg." She pointed to the orbital layout. "Set new targeting vectors, not on their ships, not on the drones. Hit the factories, hit the foundries, hit the places where they grow their weapons." Someone flinched. You're talking about outer system sanctuaries, civilian support stations. They made the rules. Susan snapped. Now we unmake them. The line went quiet, and then General Frank Holloway nodded, targeting data incoming. Within minutes, 12 rods were locked in. The Counterstrike launched. Susan leaned on the rail again, watching as the earth bled, but refused to break. Across the Pacific front, high above the ruins of what used to be Midway Station, Colonel Maddox stood atop the scorched hull of an enemy crawler ship, reloading with trembling hands. Around him, his exo unit, down to 4 functional suits, held what was left of the shoreline. They were losing, but losing on their feet. One of the suits limped toward him. The pilot, a woman named Irene Masters, popped her visor. "They've started glassing. I just watched a beam carve Guam off the map." Maddox nodded, wiping blood from his temple. "They're scared." Irene blinked. "They're annihilating us." He pointed toward the sky. "They're not doing this because they're confident. They're doing it because they're desperate. That relay wasn't just a comms node. It was their backbone. You hit a machine in the spine, it thrashes." He keyed into local comms. "This is Colonel Maddox. All surviving units fall back to Anchorage platform form. Prepare for orbital evacuation. The Admiral's throwing hammers. We're going to clear them a path." One last time. Irene didn't argue. Neither did anyone else. The battered line began to retreat, not in chaos, but in brutal, methodical steps. Like veterans of too many wars, Maddox stayed at the rear, covering the retreat, always the last out, always the last to stop firing. Back aboard Sol Bastion, Susan watched the final rod strike light up the holomap like a second sun. The impact was silent at first. Then the data poured in. One of the Vanakar's largest orbital factories, responsible for manufacturing its drone cores and harvesting arrays, was gone. Vaporized. Re-entry debris already crashing into its sister platforms. Dalton looked stunned. "We actually hit them." Susan's voice didn't change. "They're not used to enemies fighting back, let alone outthinking them." The holomap flashed again. New contacts, not reinforcements. Something else. A single Vanakar capital ship, bigger than anything they'd seen before, was emerging from the edge of the system. It moved slowly, deliberately. No escorts, no signal, just a massive, black, barbed silhouette. Susan stared. "What is that?" Dalton's face had gone pale. "If I'm reading this right, it's not a ship." "What do you mean?" "It's a harvester, an actual atmospheric planetary extractor. They're planning to scrape Earth, as in tear it open, siphon the oceans, pulverize the crust, drain every molecule of usable material." "They're ending us," Dalton whispered. Susan looked at him. "No." She turned to the rest of the crew. "They're making a mistake. Because Earth, battered and bleeding, still had one thing left. Us." The silence inside the Peregrine dropship was thick enough to choke on. Captain Eli Drayton stared at the ghostly blue readouts lining the cockpit's console. They were orbiting just outside Earth's geosynchronous ring, locked onto the looming silhouette of the Vanakar planetary harvester. Its jagged, barbed hull gleamed like a black crystal, massive and indifferent against the stars. 30 minutes to boarding, he muttered. Behind him, Sergeant Bill Carson checked the plasma rifles one last time, each weapon humming softly in the dim light. Lieutenant Tom Keller ran through the mission parameters on a wrist console, face tight with focus. No one spoke. There was no room for nerves. Not here. The harvester was a monster built to consume planets, the largest structure humanity had ever faced. It was barely moving, siphoning faint gases from the upper atmosphere, preparing to descend into the stratosphere and begin its destructive work. And if it succeeded, Eli thought, Earth wouldn't survive the week. "Captain," came the voice of Major Irene Masters through the comm, calm but sharp. "Boarding pod ready on the aft bay. All systems green. Good. We go dark until entry. No transmissions. The Vanakar can't know we're coming." The dropship slipped closer, slipping into the harvester's shadow, all but invisible against the vast hull. Sensors showed the exterior bristling with anti-boarding turrets and defense drones, some already rotating toward their position. Eli nodded. "Deploy boarding pod." The pod detached with a hiss, a sleek black dart cutting through the void. Bill tapped his comm. "Stay sharp. These things won't go easy." The pod slammed into a docking bay near the harvester's midsection. Magnetic clamps locked them in place and the outer door hissed open. Inside was a labyrinth of alien corridors, narrow and slick, lit by faint blue bioluminescence that pulsed rhythmically like a heartbeat. "Keep comms off," Eli ordered. "Visual only." They moved like shadows, a 6-man team slipping deeper into the guts of the Harvester. Lieutenant Keller checked the schematics downloaded from a Vanica informant before the war. The core should be 2 levels down, central processing node and power nexus. Destroy that, and we cripple the whole ship. "Let's pray it's as vulnerable as the files say," Bill muttered. The corridors twisted, intersected, and doubled back in confusing patterns designed to disorient intruders. But the team pressed on. Suddenly, an alarm flashed red down the hall. "Contact," whispered Donna Hughes. 5 Vanica shock troops stepped into view, hulking bioforms with plasma spears and energy shields. They didn't hesitate. The firefight erupted. Eli dropped behind cover and fired bursts from his rifle. Bolts ricocheted off the walls. Bill lobbed a plasma grenade, clearing the corridor with a concussive boom. 1 shock trooper lunged for Keller, spear aimed like a javelin. Keller rolled, firing his sidearm twice, once into the shoulder, once into the face. The alien fell with a wet thud. They pushed forward, but reinforcements came fast. "Move! We can't hold here," Eli shouted. They split, weaving through side passages, rejoining further down. Finally, the corridor opened onto a massive chamber. The core. A glowing orb of tangled circuitry and organic matter floated suspended by invisible force fields. Blue arcs of electricity crackled around it, humming with lethal energy. "Plant charges," Eli ordered. Bill and Donna dropped plasma charges on the floor, syncing timers. Keller monitored security feeds hacked from the Harvester's own sensors. "We've got 20 minutes before automated defenses kick in." Eli checked the readout. "Let's make it less than that." They retreated to the nearest exit, but the Harvester groaned. Warning sirens blared. The core pulsed wildly. An EMP shockwave rippled through the corridors, knocking out lights and communications. "Power surge!" Keller shouted. "Systems rebooting!" "Stay calm," Eli barked. They hurried, guided only by emergency glow paths etched into the walls. Suddenly, a massive mechanical screech echoed through the hall. The floor vibrated beneath them as a huge shadow appeared at the corridor entrance. A Vanica Titan, a biomechanical monstrosity standing 15 feet tall, armored in living plates, and wielding a massive energy hammer. It charged. Eli dove aside as the Titan swung the hammer, smashing the corridor wall to rubble. Bill and Donna opened fire, plasma bolts burning the armor, but the Titan advanced relentlessly. "Use the grenades!" Eli yelled. They hurled plasma charges, but the beast shrugged off the blasts like sparks. "Retreat!" Eli ordered, and the team scrambled back into side passages. Keller checked his wrist console. "We're trapped. All exits locked down." "Not for long," Bill said, pulling out a compact device. "Got a little surprise." He tossed a black sphere onto the ground. It hissed, then exploded into a cloud of nanobots that swarmed over the Titan, eating into its joints and armor plating. The beast roared in fury, thrashing wildly. "Now!" Eli yelled. They rushed forward, racing through newly opened emergency doors. Behind them, the Titan's hammer slammed down, shattering the corridor once more. The team burst into a maintenance bay filled with plasma conduits and power cores. Keller hacked into a terminal, overriding lockdown protocols. Doors opening in 3, 2. The massive blast doors slid open, flooding the chamber with harsh sunlight from space. They leapt into the docking bay just as the Peregrine's boarding pod hissed open. Eli looked back once. The Titan's enraged roar faded as nanobots dismantled it completely. He turned to his team. "We did what we came for." Bill exhaled. "Now let's get the hell out." Back aboard Sol Bastion, Admiral Susan Blake stared at the tactical display, tracking the boarding team's progress. "We have 10 minutes before detonation," Commander Mike Dalton reported. Susan nodded. "Hold steady, this could turn the tide." In orbit, the Harvester trembled. Then a shockwave shattered the silence. The core exploded, ripping through the ship's hull. Alarms blared across Vanica fleets. "Operation Thundercage successful," Susan said quietly. The war was far from over, but Earth had dealt a heavy blow, and that was enough to keep fighting. The silence before the storm stretched thin, too thin. Admiral Susan Blake watched the tactical feed with narrowed eyes. The Vanica were gathering like a suffocating cloud, their fleets converging on Earth's orbit with a lethal determination that had no room for mercy. "We're outnumbered," Commander Mike Dalton said, voice grim, by nearly 4-1. Numbers mean nothing if they don't know what's coming, Susan replied. Ready the orbital defenses, lock all fleet assets to defensive grid. Around her, the bridge was a hive of controlled chaos, officers barking orders, screens flickering with alerts, and the steady hum of emergency power. Status report on ground forces, she demanded. Colonel Ray Maddox appeared on the main hollow, flanked by his battered exosuit troops. Holding at Anchorage platform, but the Vanakar have intensified planetary bombardment. Civilians are fleeing in droves. We're stretched thin. Susan's jaw clenched. Tell them to hold. No ground lost. Understood, Admiral. From orbit, the Vanakar unleashed their most terrifying weapon yet, a swarm of nanodrones engineered to infiltrate and disable human exosuits and electronic systems. EMP countermeasures failing, Dalton reported. We're losing control of several drone squadrons. Susan's mind raced. Activate manual override protocols on all exo units. Deploy counter-nano agents. The response was immediate, but slow. The nanodrones moved too fast. On the surface, Maddox's forces found themselves in a desperate melee. Incoming, yelled Sergeant Bill Carson, barely dodging a plasma spear strike. The exosuit's HUD flickered, warning of system interference. Bill gritted his teeth. Nano swarm, targeting systems failing. He scrambled behind a collapsed wall as the nanodrones swarmed the machinery controlling his suit's power. Hold your ground, Maddox's voice crackled over comms. We're not giving them an inch. Back on Sol Bastion, Susan tracked the deteriorating situation. Fleet status? Dalton's face was pale. 40% combat readiness. Shields weakening. Susan stood, voice cold and decisive. Then it's time for the last gambit. She keyed the command console. Deploy Project Hammerfall. Deep in a hidden bunker beneath the Siberian tundra, the hum of ancient machinery awakened. The project was humanity's last hope, a superweapon designed for planetary defense and offense. A vast kinetic railgun array buried underground, capable of firing projectiles at speeds unmatched by anything in the known galaxy. As alarms echoed, the system charged, preparing for its inaugural strike. Back in orbit, the Vanaka noticed immediately. They're activating something massive, Dalton said, pointing to a spike on the sensor grid. Susan nodded. Good. Let them come. The sky above Earth lit with a fiery storm as massive projectiles launched from Siberia's depths, arcing through the atmosphere like falling stars. The Vanakar fleet scrambled to respond, but it was too late. The projectiles struck critical systems across the enemy ships. Weapon bays, propulsion nodes, and command bridges erupted in chains of explosions. On the ground, Maddox and his team pushed back the last of the swarm. System power stabilizing, Bill reported, wiping sweat from his brow. Maddox nodded. Good. Prepare for extraction. The exosuits roared to life, engines thrumming as the surviving forces prepared to evacuate to orbit. Susan watched as the last Vanakar vessels limped away, their formation broken, their attack faltering. She allowed herself a brief moment of hope. This war isn't over, she said softly. But today, we showed them what it means to fight humans. The void beyond Earth's orbit was a dark canvas painted with fire and ruin. The shattered remnants of Vanakar dreadnoughts drifted like fallen giants, their hulls scorched and cracked. Despite heavy losses, the enemy's will remained unbroken, their fleets still pressing forward in a desperate bid to crush humanity once and for all. Admiral Susan Blake stood on the bridge of Sol Bastion, her eyes burning with fierce resolve. The final battle was upon them. Status report, she demanded, voice steady despite the storm around them. Commander Mike Dalton keyed the tactical grid. Enemy fleet is regrouping for a last assault. Reinforcements arriving from the outer system. Unknown ships, but Vanakar in design. They're preparing a final push to breach the Earth defense line. Susan's lips pressed into a thin line. Ready the Vanguard strike group and all available fighters. I want every weapon online and crewed. We will not fall quietly. Across the command deck, the crew moved with practiced urgency. The ship hummed with raw energy, every system primed for war. Meanwhile, orbiting high above the battered Earth, Captain Eli Drayton readied his unit aboard the battered cruiser Nightshade. Their successful sabotage of the planetary harvester had dealt a devastating blow, but the cost was high. The harvester's destruction had triggered a ripple of Vanakar retaliation that now culminated in this final stand. Drayton report, came the voice of Major Irene Masters through comms. Her tone was grim but steady. "We're fully armed and ready to engage," Eli replied, fists clenched. "The fleet's holding formation, but their numbers are overwhelming." Irene's voice softened. "Then it's time to make history." The Nightshade surged forward, leading the Vanguard strike group into the teeth of the enemy swarm. Plasma cannons roared, beams of searing light slicing through the void. Fighters zipped through the gaps between capital ships, weaving deadly patterns as they launched volleys of missiles and energy bursts. Eli stood on the bridge, eyes locked on the tactical display. The Vanakar numbers were staggering, 3 times the size of their fleet, but human ingenuity and sheer will powered every maneuver. "Target the flagship," Eli ordered. "If we can take down their command ship, the fleet will falter." Missiles streaked toward the Vanakar flagship, a grotesque vessel bristling with weapons and armored plating. Explosions erupted along its hull, but the ship pushed on, retaliating with devastating plasma storms. Below in Earth's atmosphere, Colonel Ray Maddox prepared his forces for the ultimate ground battle. The Vanakar had landed elite shock troops, and the fight for Earth's surface was reaching its brutal climax. "We hold here no matter what," Maddox growled, rallying his soldiers. "They think they can break us with numbers. They don't know humans." Sergeant Bill Carson checked his rifle and nodded grimly. "Let them come. We'll be waiting." The battle was a maelstrom of fire and fury. Explosions rocked the landscape as exosuits clashed with Vanakar warforms. Screams and shouts echoed through ruined city streets, the air thick with smoke and ash. Back in orbit, the Nightshade took heavy fire. Shields flickered under barrage and crew members scrambled to patch breaches. Eli's heart pounded as the flagship's plasma cannon charged. "Brace for impact," the weapons officer shouted. A blinding beam struck the Nightshade, tearing through its shields and skimming across the hull. Alarm screamed. Eli gritted his teeth. "Divert power to engines. We're not dead yet." Then, a flash of brilliance. A coordinated strike by human fighters exploited a critical weakness in the flagship's rear armor. Missiles slammed home, breaching the hull and igniting internal reactors. The flagship shuddered violently. Systems failed. "Command ship disabled," Dalton shouted. Susan allowed herself a tight smile. "Now's our chance. All ships, press the attack." The tide turned. The Vanakar fleet, leaderless and shaken, began to falter. Human ships pushed forward with renewed vigor, exploiting every gap. On the ground, Maddox's troops held the line, pushing back shock troops with relentless fire. Bill wiped sweat from his brow. "They're breaking." "Good," Maddox said, "because so are we. This is the endgame." Hours later, after a brutal and costly battle, silence finally fell. The stars above were clear, unmarred by war. Susan looked out at the vast expanse, voice quiet but resolute. "We survived." Mike Dalton approached, exhaustion in his eyes. "But at what cost?" She met his gaze. "They thought they could crush humanity. They were wrong. This war will not define us. It will forge us." Captain Eli Drayton stood with his team, battered but alive. "We made history," he said softly. Major Irene nodded, "and the galaxy will remember." Colonel Maddox stared at the horizon, smoke rising from the ruined cities below. "Humanity doesn't break," he said. "It fights back." The war was over. But the legacy of human defiance echoed across the stars, an unbreakable testament that no force, no matter how advanced or terrifying, could ever truly extinguish the fire within. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like and comment. It helps us reach more sci-fi fans like you. And if you love tales where humans shake the galaxy, subscribe to Beyond the Nebula for weekly uploads. Original story by Beyond the Nebula, AI-assisted, human-created. Narrated by Beyond the Nebula. New episodes every week.